Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, and on this Jurassic James Explains, we're looking at dinosaur biomes. Now, this is a very big topic, but today's lens will be through the Jurassic World Season 4 Camp Cretaceous. Now, big spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen it, stop the video, go watch all 11 episodes, then come back. But I wanted to explain to you what they were showing with different environments, different dinosaurs, and kind of give you a more scientific view of that. That being said, spoilers ahead. So if you, again, spoilers, so I don't want to ruin it for you. It's been a week by now, so a little over a week. So the first thing to point out is they showed the first on screen Jurassic World mammal. Now the toy isn't here yet, but it was a saber-toothed cat, and it was in a desert biome, and that wasn't right. So the idea, of course, if you know the word desert, we associate to being like sandy, like mountains. But do know, like, even Antarctica is a desert, technically. It's, lack of rainfall over time. But the idea is that they had the saber-toothed cat, which we know it was, based on the tail side, in its overall build, it was probably a Smilodon, basically. And if you don't know, there's other species of saber-toothed cats since the Miocene to the Ice Age. So they've been around for a while with different species, different environments. But the one they showed was most likely Smilodon because it was so big and it's, the biggest one kind of thing. And, of course, it lived in the what we call the last Ice Age. Pleistocene. So it would have lived in think of something closer, somewhere between like the north of North America, like there would have been, there's two species, but the species, there's like, think of it more like the woolly mammoths are living with these, pine-like trees, and there's ice sheets and everything, and there's, there would have been a summer, they would have been found in South America too, so there would have been like grassy areas there. But overall, it wasn't a desert. Like, that's the main thing. It wasn't a desert that they showed there. But I won't mention more on this. This is its own topic. The next thing they showed, dinosaur, if I remember correctly, were the Tyrannosaurs. Now, one thing, they had the Tyrannosaurs in the jungle biome, and that's pretty correct. Jungles have a lot of, a lot of things fall under jungle that are very different. But where Tyrannosaurus rex lived, its range would have been as high as Alberta, Canada, Saskatchewan, and as low as Texas, but they really were found in the middle around South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, that region there. Tyrannosaurus rex lived, so back in like in the 70s, you'll see these dinosaur movies, and they're in like the western area and there's deserts. That's because the fossils were found in those areas. But in geology, we know that these things change. Now, for example, today, South Dakota is that way, but back then, 68 million years ago, it would look like Louisiana. There's an ocean going into North America, cutting it in two, and the idea was you would have seen giant swamps and giant trees, and that's how it looked in those areas at that time. How do I know this? Because we find broadleaf plants. Again, you look at today, you see these modern environment, but if you dig down to where you find the Tyrannosaurus level, you're seeing mud deposits, you're seeing these broadleaf plants, you're seeing all these things. And in fact, Tyrannosaurus rex, if you look at his feet, compared to like Allosaurus, has pretty wide feet, basically. And the idea is that it's walking and it's distributing its weight in a muddy area. Even Triceratops, most of the toys of Triceratops, the feet are like elephant, they're very tightly packed, but the truth is their toes kind of splay out more than other ceratopsians in some cases. Sauropod feet, long necks, they're more like elephants. Their feet are more compact, tight. But ceratopsians would have still had a tube-like foot, but but it would have gotten the toes spread out so it wouldn't, sink in the mud. So other than that, overall having greenery around T-Rex makes sense, Next dinosaur they found was a Ketrosaurus. There's a toy of Jurassic World Ketrosaurus. Also, if you're wondering why the video is closer, I've had a request to make it closer to see the figures. So one thing with the Ketrosaurus is that they found it in the Arctic in the show, but it was in a wrong biome. And it would have been in more like a forested area or a light forested area. What's really cool about Ketrosaurus is found in Tanzania. It's a type of stegosaur, and where stegosaurus is mainly plates and a few spikes. They're usually most stegosaurids in the family have like half plates, half spikes. But what's really cool is that it's found in Tanzania, Africa, which it's with Giraffatitan, that environment, and the bigger species is Ceratosaurus, and basically the idea is that a forest would have been unusual for it, or at least near plains, basically. So that was, pretty cool. The next dinosaur they showed were Velociraptors, and they were in the forested area. And that's one thing to point out too, is that Velociraptor species name is Mongoliensis. I actually bought this at Walmart in October, my last drive dig area. Um, and the idea is that Velociraptor mongoliensis, Mongolia today is a desert. Mongolia in the Cretaceous period was a desert. Needless to say that Tyrannosaurus Rex is 65 million years ago, Velociraptor 75 million years ago. They would have lived together, same place or time. But the idea, of course, is Jurassic Park, so, you know. But the idea is that the raptors would have lived more, these raptors, Velociraptor, would have been in more of an arid desert region. So when you see those like animation documentaries and they show Velociraptor in deserts, that's more accurate to the environment. We see Protoceratops, we see Oviraptor in those areas too. So the forest thing is something that's just more of a Jurassic Park thing. But of course, there would have been raptors or Dromaeosaurus in forested areas in other parts of the world. In fact, where Tyrannosaurus lived, he lived in Dromaeosaurus. That was a forest area, you know. But Velociraptor itself was from Mongolia. Now, the next thing to go over would be, they showed the baby Brachiosaurus, which I already bought this because I just love Brachiosaurus. And I did a video on this already, mentioning how baby dinosaurs, how this toy has 5 fingers and toes, and the adult from the same series has 4 fingers and toes. And, you know, anyway, but the thing is, Brachiosaurus found in North America. This animal, really fun because open plains. So you see Colorado, this is like the Morrison Formation, like Jurassic 145 million years ago. So the idea is that if you look at Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, their feet are always more compact compared to T-Rex and Triceratops, because where they lived, it was like a floodplain. So the idea is that there was a rainy season where it would, you know, would rain, be all green, and then it would dry out and have a, not quite desert, but open plains look. So Brachiosaurus having having splayed toes, the toes are really tight together, kind of like almost like a hoof, walking like this, with a pad on the under of the back foot. That's the design we see in front foot a little bit too. That's the design we will see for Brachiosaurus. And I mentioned this before in one of my other videos, that we don't see nesting sites of long-necked sauropods in North America because they're clearly in the Morrison Formation, and then they're migrating somewhere else to have their offspring. So again, it leads credence to this idea of it's a rainy season, dry season. They're going to migrate in during the rainy season and the flourishing and eat everything, and then migrate out basically, you know, as the drought comes sometimes. So kind of fun thing to point out there with this guy. There were some scary scenes with this one. The way it was treated by the people, the bad guys. But anyway, that's my favorite dinosaur. I was kind of biased. The next thing I want to point out, so the idea is there were another hybrid, and I think you guys know I'm not super fond of hybrid dinosaurs in Jurassic World series. My idea is that I'd rather them, the show people, you know, I'd rather them focus more on, well, quite frankly, you know, real species that are out there, that were out there, that are really weird. I mean, we you know, and to make a hybrid, I get the lure for kids and all that, I understand, but for me, it's like you could be making all kinds of other creatures that are real and weird, and not even dinosaurs, just other prehistoric things that have weird features, you know. But whatever. There will be a hybrid herbivore, the first one on screen. I probably won't buy it, just because of me. I mean, I have the Indominus and the Indoraptor over there, but I'm pretty sure someone's going to buy it for me as a gift at some point. They took basically a Spinoceratops and a Spinosaurus. Oh, I didn't go for Spinosaurus. And that'll be next. And a Spinosaurus and a gene spliced it or something. So it's essentially, they were two juvenile. It's fine. There's two juvenile Spinoceratops, but they have like a Spinosaurus tail, basically, right? And now I do find it interesting that in the show they took them to the forest environment, and they were like, they were acting kind of weird. Then they took them to the desert environment, because they're like, well, you know, Spinosaurus in the show, which will go over next, lived in the desert, and it didn't do too well. Then they took it to the Arctic environment, and they're like, oh, it's happy, and their body produces a lot of heat. But then they in show explain that, yeah, maybe it's a genetic thing, or it produces all this heat, you know. So, you know, it's sure. But the idea is that, you know, Spinoceratops living in Cretaceous China, it would have lived more like an arid forest still, but like less wet in North America. There wasn't a giant inland sea. So, sure. But the Arctic, as far as Arctic goes, there are dinosaurs in the Arctic. I'm going to go over that real quick. The most well-known example of this is Cryolophosaurus, and Cryolophosaurus means frozen, cryo, frozen, lopho, crested, saurus, lizard. So the idea there is that it's found in Antarctica, the South Pole, or near the South Pole. So the idea is that when you hear it's found in Antarctica, you assume it lives right on the pole. Well, the fossils are there, but when this animal lived in the early Jurassic 190 million years ago, Antarctica was attached. It wasn't the bottom. It was attached to South America, South Africa, and Australia, and it was further north. Now it still would have been very cold. It still would have had harsh winters, which is why you see these figures sometimes. Well, this is a Jurassic World one, but you see this, in movies or documentaries, having feathers or fuzz because it would have been in a cold environment. Period. So it wasn't as cold as today down there, but it would still have been pretty cold. Well, the idea here is that that's the most well-known example. Now, if you go to Alaska to the north, there is, at the time of discovery, I think some of them they've been renamed a bit, but Edmontosaurus has been found there, Pachyrhinoceros, which is this guy I think knows, and then a Troodon species that was bigger than the one found in Montana, Myosaurus, and of course Gorgosaurus. Now I have most of two of these at least are from the Walking with Dinosaurs, and again that ecology was found further north basically. Since then, I think they may have renamed the Tyrannosaur and the Edmontosaur something else. But the idea is that they're found in Alaska now. Alaska, super cold back then. It wasn't as far north. Same thing with the South Pole in the early Jurassic and late Cretaceous. It was still north, not that far north. So there are dinosaurs known to be in cold environments. Basically, it's not out of the question as it was like 50 years ago. But I want to point out one of my a conspiracy theory is that they have the Spinosaurus as a Arctic animal, but we know that Pachyrhinoceros actually would have been, some of them would have been in their cold environment. And as you know, or I may have complained about previously, this animal, when Jurassic World first had the first movie, the packaging on this one said Spinosaurus. And I remember when I first heard they were coming out with a Spinosaurus, I was super excited. This was a new species. They had just kind of, gotten the main media. And then I saw it, and I'm like, this is a Pachyrhinoceros. And I remember telling my wife, like, this is a Pachyrhinoceros in the store. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's not a Spinosaurus. They look very different, I get really worked up. And she didn't understand how to pull up a video, a picture and show us, So they actually came out with an actual Spinosaurus, enough, features. But maybe by making it a cold animal, they're calling back this mistake. That's a conspiracy theory. Is it true? I don't know. The next thing I want to point out, there's two more dinosaurs before we wrap it up. Spinosaurus, and they show Spinosaurus in a desert environment. And if you don't know, in the figure world, my first Spinosaurus video, I had the green version of this, the first one that first came out and was rare to find, and my wife found it for me. This one's more common, and they give a different color, so this kind of, it blends into the desert environment. Makes sense now, right? But the idea is that they showed it in the desert, and that was like, okay, because I know in the problem with this, and you say, well, James, it's Jurassic World and not a documentary, but I know kids are watching, and I know they're trying to learn stuff, and for them to put on the islands, we know they're making up stuff, right? They're making up, they're putting desert animals in forests, it's an island. But in this season 4 episode, they're specifying different environments. Now, I think it has to do with the plot of the villain to make them fight in different environments and all that. But for them to be like, the Spinosaurus is more comfortable in a desert, that's kind of implying scientifically that's true. And we know that, yes, and I'm guessing the writers, Spinosaurus species name is Egypticus. It's from Egypt, Northern Africa. And today, Northern Africa, and to Morocco, is a desert, basically. But even in mammal age, you can go back below the sand and see there were green areas. There were people in green areas, within thousands of years. 100 million years ago, North Africa was like Florida. It was a mango swamp. It was mangrove swamp, sorry. And not mango swamp, it was a mangrove swamp. And so you would have seen where, just like Florida is, right at sea level, and there's a lot of rivers and swamps like that. That's the environment that Spinosaurus would have lived in. So actually that part was what made me pick this topic today. So I was like, okay, I got to address this, So the idea is that, if you want to be more accurate with your Spinosaurus, put them in desert, put them in, not deserts, put them in forest, swampy areas. Now, I'm going to point out too, the new research suggests that Spinosaurus has a shorter legs. I did a video on that already. But the idea is that that was a bridge too far for me. So I was like, okay, we got to address this. Now the last dinosaur we're going to go over, which was ironic because I was thinking all of this while watching the last episodes, and they were like, there's a new environment being made, a new biome being made. It was a swamp. I was like, put your Spinosaurus there. Now anyway, but they had a new mystery dinosaur, and of course it was the return on screen of Dilophosaurus with the fake neck frill and being too small. They're all the wrong height in this show. You know, Dilophosaurus, if you don't remember or don't know, I did a video on that too. It's essentially Dilophosaurus was 23 feet long, not like 4 feet tall, and it was retconned in some of the comic books and stuff that, oh, that was a juvenile in the movie. No, they made him smaller. In fact, in our world, outside of canon, Steven Spielberg said he made Dilophosaurus smaller so it wouldn't overshadow T-Rex. It wouldn't be like comparison. Anyway, so so they show it in the swamp area, and I think that harkens back to the first time we see it on film when Nedry is a foresty area. But we actually know this, that Dilophosaurus lived in the early Jurassic, 190 million years ago, roughly the same time as Brachiosaurus. Difference is this guy lived in the south, this guy's in the north, basically. This is your Jefferson, and this is your Hamilton. The point is, it is known that in the Permian period, Pangea is forming. As this giant, all the countries are going together, all these coastlines that were like wet and had a lot of plants get crushed into mountain ranges in the center of the continent. So Pangea is mainly a huge desert with a coastline on the outside, right? By the Triassic period, we start seeing, the early Triassic, it's a desert still, certain regions there. As it was breaking apart by the early Jurassic, it's still desert-like. So if you see Walking with Dinosaurs, the BBC 1999 version with the Postosuchus and Coelophysis and Placeres, that's real. That was a good display of that. By the time we get to, but there's still wet areas, coastlines. But by the time we get to early Jurassic, it's drying out more in some ways in certain areas where the Dilophosaurus is found. So again, this animal should be in the desert, and that one should be in the swamp. So it's one of those things where I think I'm just kind of like, it's like an old man complaining now, but it's just, that's something to point out, that if you learn about these environments, how do you know that, James? Well, we see the sands they're with, that's the fun part. You can study the geology. So the idea is that if you see sandstone, that's sand, an environment. Now, if the sandstone is moving or have like lines in it, it's a crossbed of a river or a giant crossbed and sand dune. But where they're finding Dilophosaurus, it's showing that it's a drying out area. The rocks and the plants found there suggest that. So how do you know that? Well, it turns out you find fossil kind of plants, and then you find modern ones with the same design, or find some modern sands and deposits. You compare these environments and say, oh, it must have been like this. So that's how we, in paleontology, put together paleo environments. So it was both exciting and both annoying that they were like different environments. Different. I personally really enjoy the fact that there's dinosaurs at different times in different continents and different environments, because when you start understanding that, you start seeing where things fit, and it makes more sense to you. When you see the animal, you see its features, you can kind of assume where it lives at that point, because you know that it has these features. Anyway, I seem to be going over on this. The video should be 10 minutes, but whatever. That being said, that's my take on biomes in Jurassic World. Now, if you want me to do more videos on dinosaur biomes, different environments and ecologies, let me know in the comments. That being said, thank you very much. I really appreciate you tuning in.